of time for the deep dive into the really raison d'être, let me say, of the empowering equity, which is the so-called masterclass, where our EIF investment experts are going to explain the EIF selection process, are going to provide with some useful tips when submitting an applications and about the do's and don'ts when pitching actually for your investment proposals. I'm happy to call on stage from the venture capital area, Ghislain Terrier, investment manager and head of unit of the infrastructure, innovation and technology investments. Hello, Ghislain. Then for the private equity, we have Cindy Daniel, head of unit for Western Europe, and Miruna Cristina Gala, investment manager. And for the private credit asset class, we have Priscilla Schnepper and Vanessa Crea, investment managers. So I hand it over to the colleagues, and let's not forget that we want to make this section interactive, so people from the audience, you can raise your hand, and people online can submit a question via the chat box.
So hi everyone, thanks for being with us here in beautiful Luxembourg, so the home of the EIF. So I'm the proud representative of the male minority here, one of these brave men, but together with my colleagues we're here to give you this masterclass. So that's Power Up Your Pitch to the EIF. So we'll go, actually I'll briefly present who we are, EIF, but make it high level. Happy to answer any questions on that, obviously. But then more interestingly, we'll go into what we do, how we are organized, so how venture capital activities, private equity activities, and private debt, together with my colleagues. Then we'll go for case studies, and we want to make room for questions at the end. So first, EIF, who we are. So briefly, so we have a mission. Essentially, we want to facilitate access to financing for for SMEs and mid-caps throughout Europe, with the goals to foster, on the one hand, to support small businesses and mid-cap businesses, obviously, and employment, and on the other hand, to support the EU goals of growth, innovation, inclusion, and sustainability. So as you can see, so we've been around in business for almost 25 years. I think we've done pretty well, supporting over 2 million small businesses, as well as 14 million jobs. How we do that, essentially we can think of us as a supranational, very large asset manager. So we work with several clients to design investment solutions, mandates with them to achieve their various goals. And we have 4 types of clients. I would say the first one is ourselves, actually, the European Investment Bank Group. EIF is, as you know, a subsidiary of it. So we essentially invest our own balance sheet in venture capital, in all the business lines that I mentioned, with the goal of nurturing entrepreneurship ecosystems throughout Europe, with, I would say, seeking also for risk commensurate return. Then there's the European Commission, who we really thank for this event, who is our main mandator, so our main client, if you like, with whom we work on designing specific investment solutions. So very often it's pre-annual, so the overarching mandates are the pre-annual programs, such as InvestEU, that ran since 2021, before there was Horizon 2020. So with them, we pursue specific policy objective goals to support SMEs, but also to achieve various objectives, which I'll go to. Then local authorities and NPI. So we work with a lot of national governments or local governments, as well as national promotion agencies, to design programs so that are still within our remits, but aimed usually at really developing some regional ecosystems. And the final one, the smaller activity, but interesting as well, is external investors, so actually private investors. So we design fund of funds and mandates for them to generate returns while also supporting European businesses and innovation. So as I mentioned, we are actually policy-driven, and we fully embrace the objectives of the European Commission and the European Union on many goals, as well as the Paris Agreement. So our activities are organized around 4 pillars, what we call public policy goals, that then embed a number of different objectives. So the first one, as you can see, is competitive and growth. So here we want to support European businesses in their growth, internationalization, also develop local ecosystems. Then the second one is innovation. So that's essentially tech investments, as well as life science and digital transformation, everything. Then the next one is social impact, skills, and human capital. So this is more social impact goals here. On the one hand, so we have inclusion and diversity. We also look at social innovation, we look at education, plenty of things like this. And then we have the green objectives, so sustainability and green transformation. That's also a core pillar and growing, as mentioned, so we want to be Paris aligned. And then here we aim at developing renewable energy, clean energy transition overall, as well as sustainability from all angles. So that's, you could think of vertical objectives, and then we have also cross-cutting KPIs or I would say considerations that we embed in our investment decisions. So the first one is a bit redundant, but it's climate action and environmental sustainability. So that's our pledge for the Paris Agreement. So we have targets in terms of sustainability and climate action, and we look at it from all angles. So be it life science proposal, be it private credit proposal, we'll always look at what does it bring to climate. They don't necessarily rank all the same, but however, we have, for all of our activities, some specific targets that we want to achieve. And then the next one is social and economic cohesion, so social cohesion and economic. This is, you can think that we embed ESG, and we'll come to that in our investment process. So what do we do? I will not go too much into details, but we design investment solutions, as we mentioned, and we try to cover the ecosystem from all angles. So from very early stage all the way to growth investments and through various instruments. And we designed it through 3 main lines of activities. So venture capital, that's the team to which I belong, which also embeds infrastructure. Then we have lower mid-market and hybrid equity. So that's my colleagues Cindy and Miruna here. And then private credit with Vanessa and Priscilla out there. What do? We have several hats. So as you understood, we have a very wide variety of mandates. We've looked at the figures, and in total, we've deployed and are deploying over 130 billion through tens or hundreds of mandates, with one goal: we want to build the ecosystem and diversify investor base for funds. So then we take 3 different approaches to cover the whole spectrum from very early stage, so first-time teams with high risk and hopefully high return, all the way to very established teams that are, you could say, institutional grade. So the first role we take at the very beginning of the spectrum is market developer. So here we take a role of working hand in hand with new teams to address new market segments, so that can be new verticals. So we discuss about semiconductors, cybersecurity, so all of the deep tech. We can come on to that also for the venture, but also emerging markets throughout Europe, because, well, unfortunately, all the markets are not yet at the same level. So that's the first role that we happily take, and very often for the Commission, for example, but as well as local NPIs, and for ourselves, again. Then market catalyst is more supporting emerging ecosystem, nurturing them, be it national ecosystem, but as well as emerging teams for us. So here we want, so the team is usually already a bit established, but we don't have yet, I would say, a track record to show. So positive indications, but we still take a little faith and support them in, okay, you're delivering what we want you to do, let's go for the next step of your journey, all the way to you becoming established investors. And then the final one, market access, that's also what we do when we work with private investors, is investing in more established teams, but that resonate with our strategies and goals to deliver return, and so that's funds with obviously proven track record, more established teams. Now, delving into venture capital activities, we are organized in 6 teams, as you can see here. So you see our mugshots. So we have 2 ICT teams. We split to reflect both the market and also what we want to achieve with our mandators. So one of these is disruptive technologies. So that's something you know in the market more as deep tech. So think of cybersecurity, semiconductors, space, AI, and so on. That's headed by David Dana. So we have digital economy from Oscar Fares, which is looking at more traditional ICT business models. Then life sciences from Sandra Ferry, so biotech, healthcare, digital health, and everything. So climate and environmental impact, because that's very dear to our heart, we created a dedicated team who's headed by Adelaide Krakow. Social impact, so mission-driven businesses by Cyril, and infrastructure by myself. In total, so we have 40 investment professionals, 15 women, so not there yet exactly on parity, but we're getting there, of 20 nationalities, so we have quite a wide diversity. And then our portfolio, as you can see, is quite large, so more than 850, probably closing to 900 now funds under management, and over 350 fund managers. That's our figures, so how much we invested throughout the years. You can see that there are several acceleration phases. I would say that first one is probably part to the Horizon 2020 and the Juncker plan. And now, again, since 2021 or 2020 with the new InvestEU program, I think the takeaway is twofold. So the first one was, well, we invest over 2 billion a year in venture capital. I think that makes us probably the largest fund-of-fund investor in venture capital in Europe. But also, we are not a cyclical investor, so we are even maybe counter-cyclical in some cases. So we support the market year after year, be it a crisis or not. And I think that's very important, especially when we accompany first-time teams, emerging managers throughout their journey. We can be there for the second fund, we can be there for the third fund, regardless of the vintage. Interesting as well, what kind of teams do we support? So that's based on our actual investment activities, obviously. So as you see, we divided that in 4 types of teams: blue chip, established, emerging managers, and first-time teams. So first-time teams being the first fund, maiden fund, obviously. Emerging managers being one of generation 2 and 3, and then established and blue chip, more established managers, generation 4 and onward. I think the interesting thing is, and probably evolved over time, is nowadays we support a majority of first of emerging team. So we are benevolent to the market. We work hand in hand with new and future new funds. We want to bring new things to the market and not only invest in just the top names that we see out there. That's our DNA, and that's why we're doing these sort of exercises as well. That's all great. What about gender diversity in our team and activity? So in our team, I alluded to that. We are not there yet. 38% or 37.5% of women. That's better than the market, but that's not great. We're working on it to get closer to full parity. But that being said, we are beating the market, and I'm not sure that's actually a positive thing. But if you look at our funds, so we did a sampling from 2018 to 2022. We see the following data. So 12% of female representations in management team, that's pretty low, as well as so 13% in investment committees, and 28% it's a bit better in senior professionals. But we see, and that's why we're here, that the market has a lot of ground to cover to achieve gender parity. Positive note, what's next? You heard Astrid, so we embed the gender criteria or the diversity aspects in our investment process and selection, and we want to see better things. And if you look at 2023, we're on track to have 40%. So all of these 3 elements are actually the
to crack down the equation on empowering equity. Thank you so much, Barbara, Simona, and
to be fully transparent, so female representation in management, we expect that at least 1/3 are female, and then for investment committees and senior professionals, that's 40%. And if you look at our 2023 activities in venture, we expect that 40% of all the funds will actually meet at least one of these criteria. So we are trying to get there, and we are trying to foster the market to get there. With that, I will leave to Miruna.
Ghislaine,
yes.
Just we have a question from the
Sure.
audience, if you allow
Please.
me. So, by which team would sector-agnostic funds will be handled, or by funds addressing several but not only one sector?
A very good question. I would say, well, we don't see a lot of purely, completely generalist strategies that would cover the whole 6 areas that I showed. I would say that if it's ICT and if it's really generalist, it would be more like digital economy. If it's more tainted by life science, then it would be the life sciences team. But overall, like, we look at each proposal and then we decide who's the best suited. In any case, I would say, and that's the people that worked already with us probably have already seen that, is we work across the verticals. So we can be allocated to a team, but we do a lot of things. So I don't do, and I'm heading infrastructure now within digital economy team. I don't do only digital economy deals. I do impact deals. I do more climate or social impact deals. I do life sciences. So we are fund-of-fund investor, and we like to do a bit of everything.
We have another question here. If you can just state your name.
Yes,
Yeah.
of course.
Very small question actually, because you are showing more than 40% spotting the emerging managers, which looks very good at first glance. How do you want to make sure that the goals of European Commission, so under these 40% fund managers, to spot more the female fund managers? Because this 40%, you have to deep dive, you have to make a deep dive in this figure, and I have done this homework. It means emerging manager means that the teams, at least 30 or 40% of teams had worked, investment teams have worked together with each other before, which is a spin out actually from coming from private equity, my point of view. It's not an emerging manager. If the team is a first-time team, first-time fund, even if they are fulfilling all female gender diversity criteria, they have to give a kind of proof of concept, which in practice from your implementation means that the team has to come up at least with 3 deals without being funded. So the team needs at least 1 to 1.5 years till they find, first of all, the investors who give them the money to make the deal by deals, to provide you a proof of concept, and then you roll on your due diligence process. So how you want to make sure, please, that when you are talking about 40% emerging managers, that you at least on the behalf of Invest EU, that you make sure, because the female fund managers in Europe, they will be first-time funds, they will be first-time teams. How you make sure that they just don't, downfall your own internal criteria. Thank you very much.
Thank you. No, so I don't want to anticipate too much because we'll go through what we look at in teams. That's a very fair comment. I think we are here, so we are an interface between our mandators and the market. And I think one thing that is very important to consider is we cannot do things alone. And we want to make sure that every opportunity, so every fund that we support, will also attract private capital, market-oriented investors, because we want it to be sustainable. And for it to be sustainable, unfortunately, or well, fortunately for investors, you need also to have teams that have this experience. So it is true, when we show even first-time teams, we expect the team, it doesn't mean to be all the individuals, but we want to see some investment experience in the team. And you're right, that's a broader probably issue in the market of, who had access to capital to do this deal before. But we want to make sure that the team that we support is able to deploy a fund, because we are a fund-of-fund investor ultimately. So you need to see this experience one way or another in the team. I would say that, and we are fully committed to embrace all the goals of InvestEU. And by the way, so Astrid explained how we designed the gender criteria for InvestEU, but we are also in venture capital, and I think the lower mid-market team has already done that, already I think probably 5 years ago, of supporting gender-smart financing opportunities. And we are at the moment working with several of such opportunities, so that's led by female to invest primarily in female founders. That being said, we are convinced by this, but we want to see the right people, because otherwise if we do that, and especially because we are scrutinized, right? So if the first opportunities that we do don't meet the cut and either don't raise or just fail when they deploy the fund, that's going to be a failure. That when we can take it, we are risk takers, it's fine, but for the market, it's not going to be the right thing. So we need to see, I would say, still some. But then we are open. We'll discuss with that, and I think it's right to hand it over to my colleagues. But we want to see also hidden indicators of such experience, not only just pure track record, like have you invested a fund elsewhere.
Before you sit down, I know. One more question to you,
sure.
and then I know. Sorry.
If my colleagues allow.
Yes. No. We have time. Don't worry. We will also have time at the end, by the way, for general questions to everybody. Sorry to put you on the spot. If there are a lot of applications, which we can assume, and that the process is competitive, how do you ensure that sufficient attention is given to emerging teams and to give them some priority?
Well, we don't discriminate in emerging team or unestablished team. So all the opportunities see the same level of attention. So we will show you the whole investment process, and my colleagues will actually do it. But all the investment opportunities, so first, I'm here at the conference. You can come to me. I will actually do the one-to-ones and give you advice. But ultimately, I will ask you to apply on our website. So we have a deal submission tool on the website. This will go into the whole overall pipeline, and then we allocate people to look at each and every opportunity. Of course, if this opportunity is missing some information and so on, we will not deal with it until we have everything we need. But then we'll do an analysis for each and every proposal. And then we will give you, so be it that we move forward or if we turn it down, we will give you feedback of what we see is missing in the opportunity for you to work on that. And because obviously the door is never closed. So, I mean, short answer, there's no discrimination. And of course, especially so if we see a first-time team that goes into a vertical segment that we want to develop, a market and be it gender, we will give actually probably more attention. But I mean, we have to be fair to everyone, right?
Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Just to complement on what Ghislain said right now on our selection process, you will see in the slides that typically an investment for us, it takes 12 and up to 18 months. And that is because of such teams that needs our input. So when you're a blue chip manager, definitely, we invest. It does not take that much time. But for managers that need our input, we do take the time. And you will see as well that, if you add up the number of investment professionals that are working in EIF, we are between 70 and 80. So we have the manpower for you. And it's very important that we do take the time to work together with you.
So good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here with us this morning in such a large number. Now, just to tell you a bit about our private equity activity, which is the second pillar of EIF's equity investment activity. We invest in the lower mid-market and in hybrid debt equity funds. And we are probably the largest and the most active equity investor in Europe. EIF has been active in this market for over 20 years, and I believe the numbers that you see on the screen speak for themselves. Over time, have invested some 16 billion euros into private equity and hybrid debt equity funds, with an average annual investment volume of 1.8 billion euros invested in some 40 to 50 funds per year. So as you can see, we are a well-oiled equity investment machine. And this can only be possible thanks to its team, the lower mid-market team, which I am happy to be a part of. We are composed of some 31 professionals. So as Cindy said, we have the manpower to analyze each and every opportunity that comes across our desks. And happy to report that we are at gender parity. So we have 17 women out of 31 investment professionals. Being the largest and most active investor in the space means that also we are very much connected to the market sentiment. And we have been able to witness firsthand the tough fundraising environment that has been going on for the past 18 months. Some even say that this has been the toughest fundraising environment that we have witnessed since the financial crisis. I'm sure you are all aware of the main reasons for this, which have been the geopolitical landscape, the increase in the interest rates, and the decline in the stock markets. So following a very successful 2021, which has been good both in terms of fundraising and investments, we have seen a lot of GPs come to the market in 2022 and 2023, only to be faced with a decline in the stock markets, which led many investors to steer clear from the private equity asset class. Moreover, GPs have had difficulties in returning the money to their investors as they had promised due to depressed valuations and to the IPO markets, which saw a lack of activity. Hence, there was less fresh equity to be invested in this asset class. Good news is we have seen many GPs who have been able to adapt to this new status quo. And I'd like to share with you some of the things that they have done to be able to raise money even in this tough fundraising environment. So first off, I mentioned liquidity, which is very important on the agendas of many investors these days. And we have seen a lot of GPs really focus their efforts now on creating liquidity to their investors, really focusing on exits or any other sort of liquidity events such as dividend distributions. Some other GPs have adapted their strategies. They have included ESG policies and climate targets into their strategies, things which are very high on the agenda of institutional investors. So we have seen, for example, in the past 18 months, a real emergence of climate and decarbonization funds, which is, of course, very good also for the long-term trends of the market. Other GPs, for example, are having a more focused and more, let's say, determined fundraising process. They are starting either to focus only on their existing LP base or on those institutional investors who have appetite to invest in such market circumstances. They are starting much smaller and really having more patience for a longer fundraising process. In this tough market, of course, EIF's role is becoming increasingly more important because, as I'm sure most of you know, if EIF is involved from the beginning of the fundraising process, it acts as a real stamp of approval for other investors and can really catalyze the whole fundraising process. So as you can see from this slide, we look at the full spectrum of teams. More than half of the proposals that we analyze come from first-time teams, first-time funds. 17% from emerging teams, so teams that already have some track record together of investments. And what about gender diversity? Of course, it's very high on our agendas. The numbers, let's say, are still quite low at the moment, but are on a positive trend. So in 2021, 13% of the teams that we have analyzed have met the InvestEU gender criteria. Happy to report that in 2023, as of September this year, this number has gone up to 20%. So it's on a positive trend. We still have a lot of work to do, but we are committed to increase this number even further. So on that positive note, I pass the baton to my colleague Vanessa.
So thank you, and well, it's really great to be here. Let's dive in this next section. But let's begin with the basics. Someone of you yesterday also asked, what is private credit? So let's give a definition, right? We can define it as bespoke and flexible, medium to long-term debt financing that is provided by so-called non-traditional alternative lenders. And well, as an asset class, private credit really was an offspring of the great financial crisis. So alternative lenders kick in and spot the opportunities in the market, mainly due to the debt capital market freeze and also the bank retrenchment, especially in the lower mid-market. However, it's also on the spotlight right now. You know, you're hearing about it, being the golden moment for private credit and private debt, and it is so mainly. I'm sorry, because it really is at the intersection between two worlds. On the one side, we have the traditional debt financing markets, and on the other side, of course, the alternative private capital markets, as such, venture capital and private equity. And also it kind of enjoys features of both worlds. On one side, you have your liquidity premiums leading to increased returns for investors, as well as low volatility. And on the other hand, which is quite actual today, also some inflation protection features, which are common also to fixed income markets. Yeah, indeed, fund managers mostly structure their debt instruments with as floating rate instruments, as such benefiting from the increase in the general interest rates. So there is no surprise that, again, the asset class is on the spotlight right now, and EIF is an investor in the asset class. We have a dedicated team of 7 investment professionals across Europe and covering more than, 6 macro regions. We are quite diverse in terms both of geography coverage and also we are on stage with Priscilla, and we do have women representation of the team here. The team is led by Francesco Battazzi, who's not here today, but hope he will be enjoying the presentation later on. EIF is indeed active in the industry by committing into closed-end funds mainly, and so far we have invested in more than 75 funds, roughly 3 billion in total commitments. Of course, generating a multiplier has EIF institutional role, as mentioned before, is indeed to attract and catalyze additional resources from the private sector. We supported more than 3,000 SMEs and small mid-cap and companies across Europe. Mostly, these funds have been either first-time team, emerging teams, and also, on a residual basis, like 40% established, more established and teams. We invested across several different kind of underlying investment strategies, from senior and unitranche mainly, and also asset-based strategies, which, by the way, are relatively on the rise right now, given the current economic environment. It is so also when looking at the market, we're looking at a global market of 1.5 trillion asset under management right now, between dry powder and unrealized capital, which is quite polarized between very large managers, multi-billion mega funds, and rather smaller to medium niche segments composed of mainly fund managers, which are indeed the EIF sweet spot we were describing before, so mainly first-time emerging teams, mostly also covering rather underserved markets that are less mature in terms of the development of the alternative lending landscape as a whole. What about diversity in private debt? We looked at the data from the latest mandate, and we have some positive news. Roughly 1 out of 3 GPs we've analyzed met at least one of the gender criteria set by InvestEU mandate. And it is so, we're looking at the last couple of years of activities. Of course, the selection process is gender neutral. However, this is really good news. We've seen a rise on the number of teams that have more than 40% representation, women representation in the team, and as well roughly 10%, which is still low, but rising, of women representation at investment committee level. On the low side, we can also see a rather minor percentage of 7% of women being either founder or owner of the fund manager. We can definitely see the trends of new teams, first-time team, and emerging teams entering the market, and indeed more women are joining. Again, these comments maybe has a last remark. We also need to take into consideration that, as was said before, probably as more women enter the workforce in the investment management industry, these will change and will hopefully will do a positive change in the market. In terms of exposure also to portfolio company level, these are, however, the results from our ESG survey, the private debt survey 2021, and we also can rather see a smaller percentage of underlying portfolio companies that have women representation either at CEO level, founder level, and in the ownership. Of course, the fund managers look into the governance as part of the broader ESG policies and ESG due diligence on the underlying target company. However, of course, this does not constitute an investment criteria. Of course, we will keep looking at this data, and hopefully this pink bar will grow over time. Now I leave the mic to my colleague, Priscilla.
Perhaps before moving ahead, I'm now wearing not my hat of moderator, but my hat of mandate manager under InvestEU. And I would like just to build on the point of first-time team and emerging managers. Actually, under InvestEU, we do have specific focus on this type of teams. And looking at the latest statistics, indeed, the first-time team and the emerging teams are the overwhelming majorities compared to established teams. So this is a clear, policy indication that we follow under InvestEU. Of course, as EIF institution, we do focus also on established teams, in particular under mandates. But when it comes to this specific public program, main focus is on these two categories. So just wanted to make this remark, since we have been talking a lot about InvestEU. Just wanted to send this message. And now I hand it over to Priscilla. Thanks.
So, good morning. Okay, good morning also from my side. Now we will jump into the investment and selection process. So this is more or less masterclass, so you know what asset classes we have in the portfolio, so to say, and now we can look at how do we assess proposals. So maybe just, it was shortly mentioned by Ghislain before, to see what does EIF look at. So on one hand, we're a very experienced fund-of-fund investor in private equity, in venture capital, and in private credit. We have the experience from many funds that we see. We look at the commercial aspects that we see, look, is a fund attractive in the market? And we also try to support and give help in order to advise and support. And then on the other hand, we have kind of this policy hat where we implement the specific policy objectives. So we always assess a proposal from these two aspects. Okay, so when we walk through a process, what is usually you have a first contact, maybe in the context of a conference, or you find us on the website, then you would send an application, an expression of interest. Most cases, there are some exceptions where we can look at funds directly. And then you would have interactions with us to understand what is the principal fund concept. You send us a pitch book. We maybe look at the PPM if you have it, but it's not a prerequisite. Then in a second step, we would normally have a meeting. This is more done, let's say, on the private equity and venture capital side, where it's really the screening stage is split in two. On the private credit side, it's one, but usually with several, let's say, instances. And then if we move to the next stage, that means we go through a deep dive on the due diligence. We look at the specific aspects of the fund proposal, which we will look at further in this presentation. Then we will ask for the approval of the EIF risk committee and the board and the approval bodies. And then finally, we move on to legal negotiation. And I think what is really important to state is that engage with EIF as early as possible. I mean, let's say once you have more or less clear what is the strategy of your fund, because as mentioned before, the process can take up to 12 months or even more, and usually it does take longer for first-time teams. Okay. Now, so what do we look at? At the core of the application stands your strategy. So think about where do you want to go? What do you have in mind with the proposal? I mean, do you want to go for first of all, of course, which asset class? Well, and also, are you more on the venture side, let's say more a thematic fund? Are you more on a early stage, later stage? On the private credit side, what credit strategy are you targeting? And then this is supported by, let's say, the axis around, which we will look at in the following session, which is on one hand the fund parameters, which are more the, let's say, the geographical focus, the thematic focus, the, let's say, thematics and horizontal priorities, as Ghislain presented in the beginning. Then how do you set up the model, the terms and the conditions you have for your fund, and also, of course, the legal structure, for which we will also have a dedicated presentation afterwards. And then on the other hand, there is the team and the track record, which is basically what do you bring along and how do you use it to implement your strategy. And then finally, the market opportunity. So it's basically an interplay of what do you bring and how do you bring value to the market. So now we will walk into a deep dive into the specific points mentioned right now. And we will start with the strategy, which is, as said, is the DNA of your proposal. And you think, how do you add value to the founders, or how will you create value with the strategy that you are implementing? So we will not ask you to change your strategy, but we will ask questions. We would like to understand, ask you to really question why you have set up a certain strategy and why you see a market opportunity. And here I think it comes in the experience that we have at the EIF, that we have seen a number of strategies, so we really try to challenge you and to have a proposal that is then also hopefully attractive for the market. Then what is important in this context, we usually talk to several members of the team, really to have a coherent message, to be able to let us know why you think it fits with the market environment, why you have a real value added to contribute. So for example, let's say on the VC stage, if you have a tech fund, why you go for this? Do you have the competences to deploy it? On the private equity side, you have more of a, let's say, buy and build strategy. Do you have more of a leverage buyout strategy? What is the market you are addressing? And then finally, on the private credit side, as said before, like, is it more a senior strategy? Is it a unitranche strategy, asset-based, etc.? So, and here we have some examples and points that we look at in this context. So we just mentioned, for example, the stage. We have the sectors. Is it more of a generalist fund? We had the question before on the generalist funds. I think it was more directed towards the VC section, but just to mention that on the private credits and also to some extent on the private equity side, there are strategies that really focus on generalist funds, and then there are, let's say, other subpart that is more focused on thematic funds. And here we can see thematics in all areas, like, let's say, in the climate, in the life science stage, etc. Then what is the geography you are targeting? How do you plan to build up the portfolio? It's always helpful to have a model portfolio. Then how do you obtain the deal flow? What is the network you have in the market? How do you, what team members are in charge of originating transactions? Then how do you create value? I mean, that comes back to really the DNA of the strategy. And then on the credit side, you have how would you carry out the credit assessment? What are the credit parts that you look at, like, for example, the repayment profile, the seniority, the credit rating, etc. Then more on the private equity venture capital side, you need to look at the exit strategy. It's good to have that in mind at the moment you already carry out the investment. And then the last two parts is like the impact measurement is really when you want to set up a impact fund. We have an EIF impact methodology with specific criteria to set KPIs and then also make you accountable for these targets and KPIs that are set. And finally, what is a very important point also on the move towards sustainability. I mean, we're talking much about gender today, but as you know, EIF has a number of policies and also objectives that come from the European Commission. And one of them is really the sustainability move towards a greener economy. And in this context, you also have the gender criteria and the diversity. So we will just give a quick look at the ESG, which is really at the core. I mean, on one hand, I don't want to spend much time on this now, but just to let you know what we look at and what we would like you to incorporate into your investment proposal. To kind of see, okay, do you have any policies and governance structures in your place? Do you carry out reporting to LPs? What is the engagement stewardship that you are taking? And then I didn't focus on the two, let's say, major points, which is really the climate action and then the diversity and inclusion on the top right and left. And with this, I would hand over to Cindy for the next part.
Sorry, ladies, just before we continue, there is a question from the online participants, which is the following. Given the length of the due diligence on the EIF side, do you recommend to come and see you once everything is ready, but the first firm financial commitments, or should we wait until we have a first firm commitments to submit an application?
I mean, definitely depends on each fund and relationship, but the general recommendation is engage with us as early as possible, meaning you don't have to have a firm, generally, I mean, there are some exceptions, but generally you don't have to have a firm commitment. We do look at the fundraising traction because, as I said before, we cannot be alone in the fund. We want to attract other investors into the fund. But as the process is long and as we also try to give some advice, it is good to really reach out, send in the application, and then through the process engage with us and with other investors.
Thank you. No question from the audience, so I think we can continue. Thank you, Cindy.
Good morning. So to continue on what Priscilla just explained, once you have designed your strategy, the DNA of your proposal, you need also to ask yourself, is it the right place? Is it the right time for this new fund you plan to launch, this new product, really? So what is the current trend in the market? What are the financing needs for portfolio companies? Really, we need to understand how deep the market is before you start launching the strategy. In terms of competition in the market, what are your competitors? How do they differentiate from yourself, from what you want to do? So we will look at these different aspects of market analysis when you're looking at your fund proposal. So we do a real thorough assessment. We do know the market quite well, being one of the most important investors as a fund of fund in Europe. So we would need to understand that you do have knowledge of this market, that you know the companies that you could target, that you know the ecosystem at large, like the consultants, the intermediaries, the banks, that you know your competitor, you know what you would be doing in this particular market. For some markets which are more emerging, like more innovative, then we could have a different interaction with you and not being an expert, but more being on a learning curve with you. And I'm thinking about crossover funds, pre-post IPO, which is not yet our specialty, but on which we are working on. So for funds who have this kind of strategy, it's more on the market assessment. It will be an interplay. But overall, what we expect is for you to be expert of the markets that you will be targeting. Another aspect, and one that is really at the core, is the team. When we invest in a fund, we do invest, in fact, in a team. We invest in you. We trust you with our money, with our mission. So the team for us is something really, really important. So what we would want to do in terms of the team is to make sure that the individuals are the best placed to deploy the strategies that you want to deploy. It is the individuals, but I'm not going to make a sports metaphor because I'm not really into sports, but it's the team as well. So the interaction between the different team members. And that is something that is key in our assessment on which we spend a lot of time. And that's why we've got physical interaction with you. We spend time with you. It's not just working on paper. We work on the team. So in order to do that, we look at your background, we look at your experience, we look at how much you will be paid, what will be your incentives, what is the alignment of interest with the LPs in the fund. We look at, if the team there has been leavers, if what will be the features for the team. So we look at all the different aspects. So we test this, we challenge you on that, and as I said, it's very on one of the most important things that we will assess. So looking at this in details, as I said, background completeness and complementary. So when we look at team, we want the different team members to bring something to the story. We want to see experience in investment. We want to see operational experience. We don't want each team member to have the same story, to have the same skill set. We want to make sure that the skill sets within the team are complementary and that you cover all the aspects that is important for a fund manager. Meaning we want you to be able to select the right portfolio companies, but we want you also to be able to create value on these portfolio companies, and then we want you to be able to exit the investment. So this is key for us, and that can only be demonstrated by your background and the completeness and complementary of this background. Thing that is very important for us as well is your network. You need to be, as I said before, the experts. So you need to demonstrate to us that you will be able to work within the ecosystem, that you will be able to access the deal flow, access the portfolio companies. Make sure that, if you are not yourself able to bring something to the portfolio companies, then you will know the person that will be able to help the portfolio company grow. So your network is something that we will assess as well. We will make reference call. We will make sure that your past experience demonstrates that you've got that network. Reputation is, a must-have for sure. We do reference calls. We have screening tools. We take that very seriously because we are a public institution. Another aspect is diversity and inclusion policy, and especially regarding women. we don't want just to, and we will not select a fund just because we see a woman in the team. It is important for us that the women are there and have this and do have are heard. That their voice is heard. We don't want to, and we would not support funds where we think there might be, I don't know if the term is correct in English, but woman washing. This is not something we will do. It sounds a bit funny when I said it, so sorry, I'm not sure what the correct language is. But you get my point. Really, this is something we will not do. And to assess this, typically, we do it during our screening process, during our due diligence process. We make sure that all the partners are aligned, all the senior investment partners, all the senior investment professionals tell the same story, that they're able to voice their view on the fund. We do look at the incentives, as I would explain later in more details. But we look as well that the incentives are properly split between the team, and so that a woman should not be paid less than a man. So that would be something that we will look at. Stability and turnover. We are careful about, if there have been leavers in the team. It's normal to change job, but, if there have been some instability in the team, for us it's kind of a red flag. Why have there been some instability? Is there a problem of team culture? And that, we've got a panel this afternoon on this topic. But it is something that we look at in details to understand, why people might not be there for the long term. Because we are an investor in the fund for 10 years. We are there for the long term, and so we want to make sure that the team is there for the long term. That would be the same for another aspect of the proposal, succession issues. If someone would be to leave the fund because of age, we want to make sure, to understand that why would happen, and you need to plan that in advance. It's good practice. That's what you would expect from your portfolio companies, that succession are planned. We would expect the same from you. Another important aspect for team is workload analysis. We look at that your team is properly staffed regarding the strategy you want to do, and especially if you've got several funds. So we want to make sure that the team, is happy, is content, can work on the project, and can give the attention to the portfolio companies as they should. So we are careful about workload analysis. As I said, incentive scheme analysis, something that we do. We look at two different aspects there. We look at your fixed salary, like your fixed remuneration package, to make sure that it is in line with market practice in order to have stability within the team. We don't want, people moving from one fund manager to another just for money. We want, when we select a team, we want to make sure you are there. So we will ask you about, the salary, the bonus, what would be your incentive scheme. All the more so as for us, managing a fund should not be a management fee play. It should not be, your incentive should not come from, the management fees that we pay you. It should not come from your base salary. What we want you is to be aligned with us with the carried interest. So this is something that we pay attention to, and especially how the carried interest will be allocated within the team. And as I said before, we look at the different aspects. So we look at that the split is fair for every team members, depending of his or her seniority. And we ask for the questions. We want the answers, we really look at the numbers. We take that into account in our analysis. And last part would be on the investment and decision process and the independency of the manager. So, as I said, we trust you to deploy the team. We trust to deploy the fund. We trust the team. So we need the team to take the investment decision process on board and to take the investment decision. We do prefer to not have external members that could influence the decision one way or another, because we would not have selected them and they would not be aligned with us. What we do want is you to take the decision for the fund, but for the management company as well. We want you to make the decision on staffing of the management company, on what should be the next strategy you would want to launch. So it is important for us that you have that independence. Next one, and that one that is of particular interest, track record. So track record is for us the way for you to showcase your credentials. It's built on the team, its experience. It's really to show what you have been doing. And when I say you, it needs to be an attributable track record. So when we say attributable, it means really you having taken the decisions on the deals that are presented in your track record. And the track record also, we looked at it as a way to, as an example for your strategy. So is it relevant to your strategy? So in order to do that, we will look at documents. We will ask you for some documents, a list of transactions, some KPIs. We will work on that. On a track record tool, we will do reference calls with your past employer, with the management company of past transactions you've made. So we will take the time to understand what you have been doing before, but we will rely on you first to give us these data. So if we look at track record, first thing would be, is it relevant? Is it attributable? What would be the current performance of the deals in which you have invested? We will benchmark this against the other funds which would have a similar strategy to yours. We would do, especially in PE, a bit less on the other team, we would do a final expected performance assessment. If we were, to fast forward 2 or 3 years, what would be the performance we could expect from your investments? And as I said, we will make reference calls with, your previous employers, with a management company, with a management company, the CEO, the CFO, people you have worked with in the past, to understand what you did and how you did it. And with that, I give the floor to Miruna.
So, excuse me. Another important element is the fund parameters. And what do we mean by that? So we look at, let's say, the 3 very important things. We look at the structure of the fund. And here what is important is that we look to see as few jurisdictions as possible. And we look to see that there is substance in the jurisdictions that you are choosing for your structure. Another important element is the budget of the management company. Here what is important is that at every fund size, so at the minimum fund size, target, and hard cap, the management company is sustainable and is not generating an excessive surplus, because as Cindy mentioned, we don't want to see you becoming rich from the management fee. The management fee should be there just to pay for the team and the operating expenses. We want you to be aligned with us in that sense. We also look at the portfolio model and how you are looking to build this at the different fund sizes to ensure that there is sufficient diversity in the portfolio and to ensure that the strategy remains consistent whether you are at the minimum fund size, at the target, or at the hard cap. So this is what the budget should ideally look like. So ideally it should be at least for the investment period, and you can also present it for the full duration of the fund. And it needs to show all sources of revenue. So if you are managing more than one fund, you need to show the management fee that is coming from all the funds that you are managing, and all the cost lines that will be incurred by the management company, all the way down to net profit. We will seek to understand all the assumptions behind the numbers and really try to understand how you are generating, if at all, any profits, with a goal not to show any excessive surplus, as I mentioned earlier. So once we've analyzed all of this, we have danced with you, we've liked what we've seen, we will enter into a 10-year marriage with you. And that's a long time. And as you know, not all marriages are symmetrical. So we commit to provide the funding, and you commit to deliver your utmost to provide outstanding returns. But we need to protect our investment. So we do this by including various protective clauses in the legal documents. And I will not go into a lot of details with this slide because my colleagues Raluca and Gizem have their session later on the typical legal requirements that we look for. But just to mention a few, we want to see that there is sufficient alignment of interest, and we measure this by the commitment that you are putting alongside investors. We want to see that there is sufficient skin in the game from your side. There is no magic number in terms of team commitment. We oftentimes get asked, what is the magic number? Market standard is 2% of commitments, but there is no magic number. It needs to be commensurate with your net worth, let's say. We seek to protect ourselves against any and all conflicts of interest. So if you are managing more than one fund, we don't want to see any crossovers between the funds. We want you to be fully dedicated to the fund and the manager, so we will seek to introduce exclusivity clauses. If you are charging any sort of fees for portfolio management, these need to be offset against management fees, because again, you should not be in the business of making yourselves rich from fees, but from carried. And lastly, and very importantly, if things go extremely bad, if things go extremely south, we need to be able to, together with the other investors, of course, not just ourselves, but to be able to remove the manager with or without cause, to be able to put the fund into a suspension if some of the key managers decided to stop being involved in the fund and the manager. And in case there are defaults by the other investors, we need to have measures in place for that as well. So we've boasted all throughout our presentation that we see a lot of proposals, which we do. So we've put together a list of tips for you if you want to pitch to EIF. We've put together some tips which we hope will be useful when preparing your presentation. So first off, you should own your story. Know what your strengths are, know what your weaknesses are, and don't oversell. Really present the team as it is. my colleagues mentioned earlier, you should really understand the market. You should know what the founders are looking for, and typically it's not just funding. So you should present us what your unique selling point is and how you plan to address the founders' needs. What is your unique selling point in the market that you are targeting? Tip number 3, you need to define your strategy, and this strategy needs to be unique to you. It needs to be unique to your team and to the market in which you are investing. It's as my colleagues mentioned, it's the DNA of your whole proposal. Tip number 4, when establishing the fund parameters, so I mentioned earlier the legal structure, the budget, the portfolio model, don't be overly creative. We are not looking for creativity in this area. We just want to see market standards. So the 2% management fee, 8% hurdle, 20-80 carry split, this is exactly what we are looking for. If you are trying to deviate from this to try to attract investors, this will stand out and not in a good way. So don't be too creative. Stay as standard as possible. Again, here, don't oversell. We see many proposals, and we can smell when there is greenwashing, woman washing, as Cindy mentioned, or any sort of overselling. So please don't do that. We mentioned that fundraising can take between 12 to 18 months for a first-time team. Be prepared for that. It will be long, and there will be a period of time where you will be dedicated to the fund, but there you will be earning no income because you will be fundraising. So be prepared for that financially and mentally, of course. Know your investors. So what we mean by that, don't target investors that are not interested in first-time teams, that are not interested to be there in a first closing, because there are such investors out there. Really be focused in your fundraising and target those investors which you know will be there from the beginning. It's okay to start small, because the important word is start. It's okay to start with a smaller sized and have your feet on the ground, have the boots on the ground and start deploying, and then allocate a longer time to fundraise and be able to reach your target size. But the important word is start. So if you've been successful enough and have already raised the first fund and are coming back to the market with a second or third fund, and are coming back to EIF, we also have some tips for you. Tip number 1, you need to take responsibility for the performance that you are presenting. Of course, there are outside external factors that can impact the performance, but be transparent and present the track record and the mitigants and learn the lessons along the way and present the lessons learned. Be able to think on your feet and adapt to market changes. Also, be receptive to the input from the investors, who oftentimes see the market trends and can guide you in certain directions. Regarding portfolio management, it's important to know when to make those difficult decisions. Which company to cut and which company to keep, which people to cut and which people to keep. So it's important to stay focused and be able to make the tough decisions when needed. And lastly, although you've been through this before and you've been through the EIF process before, keep an open mind and treat everything as a learning process, and you will be ahead of the pack. With this, we can jump into some case studies.
First, why do we decline proposals? So just a quick overview on the typical reasons. as Ghislain mentioned at the start of the workshop, we do invest the money from our mandators. So we have mandatory requirements. Most of our mandates will ask for a EU27 focus. So we can also invest in candidate countries and EFTA countries with some mandates as well. But we have strong requirements in terms of geographical allocation to EU. Legal setup, my colleague mentioned, the simplest, the better. So we don't want to see offshore jurisdictions or non-compliant jurisdictions. So that would be a reason for declining proposals. And no or limited strategic fit, we do target to invest in SMEs, startups, mid-caps. We have no money to invest in real estate or some sectors for which we have no or limited strategic fit. So that would be the constraints coming from the money that we deploy. But also, we've already mentioned what we are looking for, and you will see that we decline proposals when we could not find the comfort on this element in the different proposals that we have assessed. So it would be on team if we assess that the team has limited investment experience or experience in the specific strategy of the fund. That's why we do try to dig further into these elements. If we believe that the team dynamics is off, if we have some concerns about the reputation of the management company, this is something that that would lead to a negative conclusion on our side. For investment strategy, typically, if the strategy is too narrow, there's not enough deal flow, or if the fund size is what we consider unviable. So it would be fund size that would be too small for us in order for you to deploy the strategy you want to do and to have the team that would be able to deploy the strategy. If there's no unique selling point, if your proposal is not differentiated enough compared to your competitors, this would be also reasons for rejection. And governance, terms and conditions would be as well reasons for rejections. If we dig into the case study, so first one on track record. So here it's a made-up example. Don't try to find who it could be. It's completely made up. So let's say that a first-time team has come and sent us their proposal, and this team is composed of 3 partners. They plan to recruit more junior in the future, and they came to EIF wanting to raise a 150 million fund focusing on profitable software companies in the Iberian region. We've discussed the strategy with them, and now we look at their experience in more details. So partner A has experience, as a student. They have started investing in early seed companies, 30K, provide a track record on this investment. Then, once they graduated, become an M&A associate in a UK investment bank focusing on consumer, then became a PE associate in a private equity Spanish firm, and in 2018 changed job and became the CFO of a portfolio company that was under LBO from that Spanish firm. He partnered with partner B, who has experience in transaction services in Portugal, and then started working in the same PE firm first as an associate, stayed for 10 years, and then moved up to be a senior investment professional in that firm, and became a director. Partner C has worked with them on a project as an operational consultant for software companies, and has done their whole experience as such a consultant. How will we assess their track record? So as I said earlier, first question would be, is this track record relevant, and would the deals be attributable to these different professionals? So this would be how we would assess it. First, for partner A, investment in early seed companies, that would be not relevant. The fund will be focusing on SMEs, so established company, profitable companies, so quite different from early seed companies. So we would consider that as not really relevant for what the fund will be doing. Then the M&A associate, good experience, but being an associate, you're still under the control of the more senior bankers. So even if you have a list of deals, it's good. It shows you have started building your experience, but for a partner, not really attributable. Then moving up to be an associate in a Spanish private equity firm, associate still a bit junior, so same. We will not consider the deals as attributable. It's a good start to build your career on, but from there, we cannot say that the deals will be attributable for a partner in a private equity fund. CFO of a portfolio company, that would be considered relevant and attributable. It would be attributable because as a CFO, you are taking the decision. So you're considered senior enough. So for a partner role, that would be seen attributable. Relevant, the company is under LBO. It was a Spanish company, so in the market, it would be even more relevant if it's a software company. So that is something that we will consider relevant and attributable. Partner B, same as for partner A, transaction services in Portugal, as a junior, not that relevant and attributable. Then, looking at the PE experience of that partner, what we would be especially interested in would be the experience as a director. Because as a director, this person would have lead transactions, would have been in lead of the monitoring of portfolio companies, would really have be at decision level making in terms of providing advice and would be there for the portfolio companies. So for us, that would be the experience that would be the most interested in terms of relevance and attributability. So we will ask that person to explain to us exactly what his or her role would have been on the deals when that person was a director. Was he originating the transaction, or was he monitoring the transaction? What has he been involved in exiting the transaction? All of this is something that we would be willing to understand, and we would take time to understand the role of that particular person on these transactions. Then partner C, operational consultant for software companies. It would be considered, especially the experience as a senior consultant, as relevant and attributable, because we want to know that this person would be able to provide added value to the portfolio companies. So we would take that experience into account in terms of track record assessment. So in conclusion, what should you present to your prospective LPs? First, for the LP to understand where you're coming from, quick CV of the different team members. So even, your experience as junior should be showcased so that we understand your journey, where you're coming from, what really you've been working on for the past years. If we dive into the transactions, then we need to have all the typical KPIs for the relevant and attributable transaction. So it would be the date of the investment, date of entry, date of exit, the geography, the sector, the amount that you invested, the percentage of the shareholding, the current valuation, or if the company has been exited, what is the amount that have been realized on the IRR. That would be what we would expect to see when we see a list of transactions in which you have invested in the past. And we do have funds in which partners have more advisory role in the past. That would need to be clarified as well. If you were an M&A banker, you need to clearly provide us with, the background of the transaction you've been working on. But don't, and it's Miruna who said it before, don't oversell. It is an interesting background, but we need to understand exactly what you have been doing in the past. An interesting thing for us to see is selected examples. It does not have to be, the perfect investment you've made, like your success. It can also be case studies of investments that were not that successful. What is important for us is to understand if you have made this investment, they were not that successful. We need to understand the lessons learned, why you would not, why it did not go the way you wanted, and what you would have done differently, if any. Typically for private equity, we do like to see value creation bridge to understand where the value creation comes from. So that is something that is important for us, and I think for the market as in general. One thing that we do ask for, so when we say it, it sounds way more complex than it actually is a synthetic fund. So in the case where you have been doing deal by deal in the past, what we would like to see is what if it was not deal by deal, but it would have been a fund. So it's just really modeling your deal by deal experience as if it was a fund. So obviously it means that there needs to be some consistency within the deal. It means that in terms of ticket size, in terms of timing, but if you have the data, this is something that helps us with our assessment, as in that case, we can benchmark this synthetic fund to the same to funds that would have been similar and with the same vintage. So easy exercise. In that case, you just take the market standard terms that Miruna has just mentioned. The 2% management fee, 8%, 20% carried. This is clearly what we would want to see, and it makes investors in a position to benchmark your fund. So really small exercise, but that we will encourage you to do. So that would be typically what we look at for a private equity track record. And now I'll give the floor to Ghislain for track record for team, I think. Yeah.
Question. Well, sorry, we need to wait for microphones so people online can hear you.
Hello, my name is Nelly. I was looking at the way you analyzed the previous experience, CV, and I was just wondering, like when it comes to women in general, we all know that sometimes it's really hard to get into higher position. We know that the percentage of people who actually make it to the higher position are that low when it comes to women. And I see that even if somebody has experience in PV, you say, or associate, for example, you say that you don't see it as relevant. Does it already show that then it comes to even women who want to make it, assuming that you have the experience, but you just didn't make it to become the CEO or somebody who could actually make the final decisions, then when you want to start your own fund, you're already limited in that area, because I feel like it's already biased and discriminatory, because as women, we're already biased to get to the higher level, and then when you actually want to break into this industry, you already have criteria that says if you didn't become a CEO, if you didn't become really high, and then your experience is not attributable. Can you expand a bit on that?
So for us, it's important to make sure that you have the experience to provide and the financing, and it's what Ghislain explained in the earlier section, to make sure that the financing will flow to the portfolio companies, and we will be able to make these portfolio companies grow. So we know that for women it's more difficult, to break this, to start having this experience, and that for years it has been so that senior profile as women are more difficult to find. But we are really trying now to change that parameter and to build the momentum for bringing women to the next level. But still, we do need to see some experience that would be considered relevant and attributable, no matter what, to make sure that the money will be. We need some certainty about who we select, and we need to make sure that the money would be flowing in the portfolio companies to grow them. So we do have this selection. We do look for track record for teams. That would be, something that is important for us to provide us with comfort.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Colleagues, there are a few questions. Do we have questions from the audience? Please go ahead.
But I can be very loud.
No, it's for the online audience.
Okay. Does it work now? Yeah, perfect. So before you mentioned for first-time managers, start small. Then in the next discussion, you mentioned also unviable fund size. So I would love to know what is the sweet spot for EIF for the first-time manager to start small, but not too small, so it's not a reason to reject.
Yeah. So when I mention unviable fund size, it does depend on the strategy and the team composition. So there's no right answer in terms of minimum fund size in which we will invest. But what we want to know is that you will be able to have, a team that is properly staffed for deploying the fund, and this is partially linked with the fund size. What we look as well in terms of fund size, it's linked to the fund composition as well. It needs to there's an interplay with your strategy. So the fund size needs to be viable with regards to the strategy you want to deploy. So if you were to tell us that you want to invest in that you want to raise a 200 million fund that will target to invest in 10 portfolio companies, and that your typical sweet spot for investment will be 10 and 20 million ticket. But then your minimum fund size, you put it at 50 million, then it's not going to work with the strategy that you want to do. So that would be considered as not working. What we would not be, we cannot invest in funds that are too small, just for a reason of for the ticket that we deploy, and for that, as we mentioned, we cannot be the only investor, so we need to have other investors. So there's, as well a place there where it's unlikely that we will invest in 15 million fund, like 1.5. We can see in the market very small fund that for us would be considered too small regarding the tickets that we invest.
Mike?
Not sure? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, no, just to complement a little bit, the reason why we look at the team, of course, and the number of the team, the number of people in the team, is also to assess the origination capabilities. So how many effectively deals can be deployed, and during of course, the investment period of the fund. And so it's a bit of also a reverse engineering to look into the market, to look at the partners and their origination abilities, and of course, timeliness in the deployment of the fund.
So follow-up question regarding the team. Do you ever consider solo GPs if they have an investment team?
Okay, so maybe first, before let's park this one just for a second, because I think it's important to understand that you have 3 lines of businesses at EIF here, and we all have our ways of looking at things, and 3 different market reality. So private equity, venture capital, private credit, and the fund sizes, the size of the teams, also the seniority and the maturity of the markets are different. So to come back on your question, what's the minimum fund size and so on? We look at it differently. In venture, if you're really doing an early stage fund on a niche vertical, we could go as low as 30 million or even potentially below. Of course, it needs to be commensurate with the tickets we want to deploy. I also want to highlight that this is general tips, it's not only for EIF. And sometimes we also feel that, well, you want to do something, but it's probably not institutional level yet. And maybe it's actually better for you to do a 5 million fund, with family offices, because they are interested in the vertical you want to target, and come back to EIF later on. Because, we will come with a whole set of requirements, from governance, from legal perspective, and so on. So this is a different level, and sometimes it's better to start small even before us and just do a few investments to showcase your investment strategy and your thesis, and then come to us. Now, to solo GPs, that's a very interesting question, also resonates with all of this. We look at it. I think that the problem is, again, about the institutional setup from a venture capital perspective, because we like it, we see it in the market, it's a trend, no doubt about it. In the US, it's come to Europe. However, for us, very often, well, we've done business angels. We had the Pan-European Business Angel program, so it's a bit of solo GPs, if you like, because we created sort of synthetic funds with them. But we have a hard time usually finding an agreement with solo GPs in terms of what we want you to deliver, which usually involves a whole well-rounded team rather than being on your own. And very often, we're discussing with solo GPs, because we looked at it and we were interested, we figured out that from both angles, it was maybe better that they work with others. If they want to grow to the next level, hire a team and do something larger scale, then we are happy to follow suit. But very often, the solo GP setup doesn't work for us. Not that we close the door altogether.
We have a question from the gentleman over there.
Hi, my name is Till from Identity Ventures, and I'd like to get back to a point that Nelly mentioned earlier, to add on another dimension, is I understand the mandate of the EIF as also pushing forward the financing, or in this case, the venture industry across Europe. And how do you cope if you look at past experience with innovation? Because I would say innovation does not come from experience you have made in the past and replicate that. So I would love to see in the venture capital industry completely different approaches and not to do the same shit as others have done before. So how do you address this issue? And that I understand is part of the mandate of the EIF. Thank you.
So thanks for the question, interesting. And indeed, I mean, venture capital market is reinventing itself constantly and technologies are evolving. So do we. I think there are two sides to the answer to your questions. So first, as you mentioned, you're very right. So you cannot just take the past for granted and just repeat, rinse and repeat and deliver. Well, sometimes it works in some verticals, but you know, like frontier technologies, I mean, we look at semiconductors, we look at quantum computing, like how much of a track record can you have in these sectors? So on that front, we actually look at experts, and probably more the experience would come from operational or even research perspective, rather than pure investment track record. So we will want, especially when we're investing in these niche verticals, that the people have this sort of background, and not necessarily from an investment perspective. That being said, there's still, I mean, you're investing a fund, you're deploying a fund, and that begs a venture capital question about like, how do you structure around, what do you invest, what you target as ownership, you know, how you deploy your portfolio. And that's something that often we see is lacking for pure operators. So we like that we actually mix the profiles. So we like that we, and actually my next case study is a bit about well, I won't go in that level of details, but it's about having complementary profiles, and my colleagues mentioned that actually will deliver the best outcome. So we will want to have the technical expertise, and we will want to have people that know how to invest and how to deploy a fund, because we've seen, and I think, so the market in venture capital has been bullish for like 10 years, almost like until recently. I mean, now it's a different story. But the truth is we've seen a lot of operator-led funds that were surfing the wave, you know, and the FOMO and the hype, worked out well on unrealized returns. But nowadays, well, you know, when the market turns around, if you didn't properly structure, if you didn't make sure that you have, you know, follow-ons and so on, well, your fund is maybe doomed for failure. So we want to see both sides. But again, like, we have an open mind. We don't only look at, have you done 3 investment fund generations of investing in venture capital? No.
Perhaps we could take a couple of questions from the online participants. So first of all, is there any experience to suggest that having an early indication of interest from the EIF helps or is used effectively in attracting co-investment?
You want to take it? I can take it. Okay. Yes, so I think there are 2 things. So you've seen that we have several steps in our process. I think what we are happy to do even before the approval is do some reference calls. And you can say, I mean, of course, like if you're in the first screening stage, we didn't take a first opinion on the opportunity. So I would say it's a bit premature to say that EIF is looking at it, because if we say no, well, it's harder. Then starting from second screening and especially due diligence, then the certainty that we will invest increases over time. So that's obviously something that you should be sharing with the other investors. And we're happy to provide reference calls. So when we are in due diligence or post due diligence, and because as you understood, whole process to approval can take 6, 9, 12 months. Approval, not commitment. And you need to fundraise in parallel, and we encourage you to dual track. We're happy to talk to investors and say, okay, that's what we look in this proposal, that's why we're doing it. And yes, we actually see that, and that's something that we even assess in terms of what's the catalytic role of EIF. And frankly, very often, I mean, you've seen the figures, you've seen from all angles. We've been there for a long time. We're a stamp of quality on the proposal that we select. So the private investors and other investors like it.
Thank you very much. Another question for actually all of you. How important is the ownership of the management company? Is it a deal breaker? If the GP is hosted in a company that handles the fund management, but also has other activities?
We have a case study on captivity, but so maybe we keep it yes. Because otherwise we will not make it, I think.
And then to conclude, the last question from the online participant. Could you tell us the percentage of applicants that make it to each step, and are there situations where the funds meet all the criteria, but you do not invest in it because it is not the right timing or you don't have enough funds? And in that case, would you be willing to give the fund a seal of quality so it can help attract investors? there is also an example, a bit like how the EIC gives a seal of excellence in companies that meet criteria, even if they do not get funded by the EIC. That's very interesting.
There's plenty of angles. I mean, on the first one, I mean, do we have data? Well, probably, but I don't have it at hand. I would say, like, ultimately, you know, we probably reject, I mean, sorry for the negative twist, over 80% of the proposals that we receive. You don't see it necessarily in the market figures because some funds that we reject don't actually manage to raise, but we are quite selective. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if you have it as well for each step, but I mean, what we try to do actually at EIF is filter very early on. So very often, you know, contrary to a lot of private investors out there, when we do the first screening, we allocate 1 or 2 people to talk to you. You know, it can be like an hour call or several hours calls, you know, to make sure that we understand the proposal, and then we discuss all together with the relevant team to assess the proposal. And that's why, like, on the good thing is we give precise feedback. So if we don't do it, we tell you why. So then, if you pass the first cut, very often, well, I'm not saying that we do 100%, but there's less attrition. Now, to the seal of quality, yes, it can happen that we don't have a mandate or don't have enough mandate capacity for some proposals, actually. So you can see, and then you go on our website, go on the InvestEU website and EIF and so on, you'll see what we look for. And it's true that there are verticals for which we have mandates and we are well funded. And then, especially now, if you're like more generalist, there's a lot of competition, the bar is very high. So we might like the proposal, but ultimately, I'm sorry, it just doesn't pass the cut, which is higher than, yes, if you were doing a very niche vertical. In that case, of course, you know, if we like, I mean, well, we'll try to say it in advance. I mean, sometimes it happens later in the process because, well, we are doing several due diligences in parallel and want to select the best one. But if we like the proposal, we are always happy to do some referencing with the investors and see, okay, why we liked it and why we rejected it. So that's something we do. About the EIC question?
It was an example, like the EIC is giving seal of excellence in companies that meet criteria, even though in the end they don't get funded by the EIC. So it was an example, yes.
So that's not something we do at EIF. Again, I mean, we do it more through referencing, and it happens, you know, I mean, we do even for some countries or some markets, we will do a close call, so do like a specific process to select applicants, and we might like more applicants that we can actually do, and then, well, we'll happily talk to the players in the market and say, well, look, these guys, we didn't finance them, but we actually like them because this or that. But we don't do like an official seal of quality or something at the EIF.
Thank you. We have another question from the audience.
Hi, my name is Anna Andonovska from Even Founders. I'm curious, does EIF usually come as a first investors and then the fund managers go and raise the, say, like the double amount, or do you prefer that fund managers come with already committed capital and then you kind of match that capital?
So what we want to do typically is to be a first closing investor. So we want to be there from the start, and especially as our colleagues Raluca and Gizem will provide you some more details on that. Quite a few comments on the contract on your LPA. So it's always better that we come first, and especially as well as Gisela mentioned, we want to be catalytic. It's really one of our mission. We want to convince other investors to invest in your fund. Having said that, as Sam, we cannot be the only one, so we need to make sure that there are private investors alongside us. But typically, what we would want is you to engage with us quickly, and as a first step, and then during the process, we will discuss with you your fundraising strategy, with whom you are talking to have a sense of timing and when the first closing would be, and then we can assist you, especially for first-time team, through reference call. So that would be really something that we would do.
No, definitely, and maybe one point within, I mean, ideally, because we want to do so much structuring, but still be catalytic, it's good to approach us as early as you can. That being said, if we have a 12 to 18-month process, we also don't oppose you doing a first closing while we're still talking. I mean, the important thing is that first, I mean, you understand that you will need to meet our criteria and our legal requirements, even if you do a first closing, and that your investors are aware of that. But well, being realistic, sometimes some teams need to do a first closing to just either enter the market, start building their footprint, or just keep being active if it's a repeat investor.
Is there a requirement of how much the other private investors needs to invest? Does it have to be a matching investment or a certain percentage?
So yes, and yes. So there are two sides for it. I mean, the first is our mandate requirements, but it's also stated rules. So what we expect, I mean, we can deviate from that, but the stated rule will have to be respected, be it at the fund level or if we really do, because sometimes it can be up to 75% for some specific strategies of a fund. Then we'll ask you to do it at the company level. So each time you do financing, then it needs to be respected. But our baseline is that 50% of the fund should come from market-oriented investors. So that could be by the way, the national promotion institutions of the country, because like if you look at BPI and so on, they do, I mean, provided it's a market-oriented, pari passu, investment that counts. And then we expect 30% from private investors, for which we count, by the way, the team commitment.
Yes, please. I suggest we take the last question from the audience, then we finish the presentation so that we don't overrun too much. Thank you.
So my name is Tamara. I have a question around required returns. Let's say you invest in deep tech, and we all know that it takes much longer, and you invest early on, just like the EIC TRL 6 and up. What kind of performance requirements do you set in selecting the fund managers?
So it's a good question. We usually expect that you come with your expectation, of the performance that you would deliver with this strategy. I think when usually, I mean, to take what we see in the market, if we are looking at a very early stage fund that is focusing on deep tech, we would expect that they target like 3 to 4x. I mean, and then some investment should deliver 110 or 100 times so that they become fund returners. Because risk adjusted, you're probably closer to what I would say growth low in market would expect. I'm not sure at EIF, but I was doing low in market buyouts before, and our market standard and our target when we were doing a fund was 2.3 times X net return. So that's what we expect. But then it's risk adjusted. So venture, we would expect it to be higher. And well, deep tech, yeah, no, exactly. I mean, deep tech. And again, I mean, so EIF, there are two things to consider. We are return oriented, but it's not always all about the returns, and we are patient. I think it's important if you're doing very early stage, the question will be what's your exit strategy, what's your investment horizon? And for us, we can wait, all the funds, I mean, we discussed about there will be presentation from our legal colleagues about a standard fund life being 10 plus 1 plus 1. I mean, we have funds that are 20 years old, that were doing deep tech in the early 2000s. And that's, well, some don't deliver, but some deliver returns. And actually the winners might take 10 years because if you're coming in pre-seed or seed and you want to max out the return, maybe you wait until the IPO, and that might take a really long time. And even if you go to the IPO, you might want the share price to take off. I mean, if you IPO'd just 2 years ago and you were in lockup for 1 year, then you were at the worst time to sell. So maybe you need to wait for longer. So we are open. We have an open mind in terms of investment horizon.
Thank you.
On that front.
Thank you very much. I understand we have still a few slides to go, so Ghislaine,
so we have two. So maybe then I'll accelerate and let's make it interactive so that you can ask the questions. We wanted to do two case studies from the VC/private equity perspective. The first one being on the team setup. So here we're talking. So this is real life examples, sort of anonymized and sometimes we combine. So don't try to find who it is. But here we had a first-time team raising a 100 million fund, focusing on late-stage impact companies. Team composed of 2 partners with limited relevant investment experience, so not so much, but significant relevant sectorial expertise. So that could be operators, or that could be people that maybe, so we are talking VC equity investment, so maybe they were running an accelerator or grant program, or maybe they were doing debt investments, venture debt investments. So that's relevant, but limited in relevance for us. They proposed to offset that to include a seasoned investment professional, so VC investor, on the investment committee as an external member. And then, interesting as well, the financial parameters, so proposed management fees as 2% of commitments during investment period, with an aggregate cap, we like it, of 17% for the lifetime of the fund. And the minimum fund size for this fund was 30 million. So the point, the silent point here is the budget was allowing the recruitment of a third partner only at target size. And then the proposed team commitments was 0.5%, which is, well, as you understood, quite below market standards and what we expect. So here, few attention points that we identified. I mean, we like the proposal, by the way, so we worked with the team hand in hand to correct, and you'll see what we did afterwards. So we like the fact that they are late-stage impact companies, that they target late-stage impact companies, and we like the profiles of the people. But we know also that it's a small first-time team with a limited alignment of interest and limited investment expertise. In addition, we had question marks regarding the viability of the minimum fund size, and it's because from a budget perspective, we were not sure that would fit the team properly, and in particular, well, that would not allow at minimum fund size recruitment of a third partner. So what did we do? I will actually start with the third point because everything trickles down from that, but the team setup for us was paramount, and we felt that while we liked the team and we discussed that about operators and sector experts, we want to have a seasoned professional, investment professional in the team, and having someone third party, external, in the investment committee is nice to have, but for us, it's not a proper mitigant. I mean, we invest in the team that we see. It's great that you have that you piggyback on others' expertise, but it should just complement and help you. So in the end, after discussions with the team, we were quite firm on that front and said, look, the recruitment of the third partner with adequate investment experience is a must-have for us. So we will put that as a condition for EIF to come in closing, and that has to happen at minimum fund size. And then, obviously, we put protection around this, so through outside letter and the key executive clause to protect the team composition. So then we have an issue, though, because we said, okay, you need to recruit the third partner, but you can actually not afford it at the minimum fund size. So we went through two different ways of trying to solve this. The first one was the discussion about minimum fund sizes. So we felt that, well, if you increase it to 50 million, that would give you enough budget, enough leeway to actually recruit these people. However, being realistic, that's a late-stage impact fund, which is a nascent market. We are not sure about the fundraising, and if there's a fundraising risk and we put a condition, that might lead the proposal not to happen at all. So in the end, we said, okay, look, it's great to have a target size around 50 million, but minimum fund size we agree should remain 30 million. We'll find another solution. So what we actually did, and it might seem counterintuitive for an investor, and maybe that doesn't fly super well with some private investors, but that was for the better good of the proposal and all the investors, we looked at the management fees and the associated budget. So of course, we looked at, you've seen how granularly we look at the budget, but we found that, well, if we allow you to charge 2.5% management fees during the investment period, because you're a small fund, I mean, of course, if you're a 500 million fund, don't even think of asking that. We said, okay, look, I think we can make an effort of increasing the management fees during the fundraising period, during the investment period to 2.5%. That will give you the necessary buffer to hire the third partner. In exchange, you'll have to have the third partner before we invest. However, because we are EIF and we are scrutinized and we want to implement some market standards, the overall cap on management fees will remain the same. So for the overall life of the fund, regardless of you charging more, you'll still have to stick to 17%. So that means likely that you'll get less fees later down the road, which is hopefully not an issue because, well, by the time the investment period is over, you should raise the second fund. And then probably at the second fund, we'll say, look, we made an effort on the first fund, but it's 2% for this one. So that's what we did. And then we still have the problem of alignment of interest, but in that case, we did, and frankly, I mean, you need to see it because that's like very long process and very, very intricate, but also it can seem a bit intrusive, but we really encourage you to be open. So in that case, and we do that quite often, we went through the personal financial situations of the partners and say, okay, I mean, 0.5% is way below what we expect, but what's your personal wealth? Did you generate returns? I mean, sometimes it happens that you sold the company or you had a, I don't know, life event that made a financial boon for you. But in that case, we knew that the personal wealth was not that high from the people. In addition, there was a first-time team, so they had to actually seed the management company, so capitalize it. So what we did is, well, look, the commitment for the fund is 0.5%. Would you add the 100K or whatever that you seeded for the management company as team commitment? And in that respect, we discussed with our risk team. We said, well, look, you know what? For your personal commitment, we think that you have a high skin in the game. So we let go of, we accept this 0.5%. That's not a given. Again, there are market standards higher, but that's things that we do. And actually quite often, especially for first-time teams. So takeaway, we work hand in hand with the fund managers. Most fund parameters and more than the fund parameters can be adjusted. However, we look at the proposal in details and we have critical points that needs to be addressed. So it could be the track record, as Cindy mentioned, or it could be the team composition as I just went through. Next one, unless you want to have quick questions on the team composition. No? Okay. So we had a question on the, oh, there's a question, sorry.
I just have a quick question on the amount, in that theoretical case, the amount of capital that you would commit or have committed.
In that fund?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know exactly. I mean, that's the case. Like, if we really like the proposal and the target size, say, was 50 to 60, it might be that it would be a case where we could invest up to, well, let's say 15 or 20, and actually not represent more than 50%. I would say that's probably like, I didn't do this deal, but my guesstimate would be that at least 15, because it would be 50% of the target size, which we can do. Normally, our maximum holding ratio is 25%. In some cases, we can do higher, like, for example, the gender criteria allows us to go to 50%. So if we like the strategy, we would make this effort. We can go also accompany you a bit more closer to the target size. But again, we cannot do the whole thing.
Thank you.
Welcome. So we had a question on management company ownership, and here, so the case study is more on independence and captivity, and we have two case studies on that. So the first one, PE and VC funds. So here we have a first-time team raising a VC fund and joining because probably they couldn't afford the whole, well, maybe to pay themselves, not pay themselves during the fundraising, but also to benefit from fundraising traction from a broader asset manager and to seed the management company. They decided to join an established private equity management company. And we see a lot of, I would say, strategy gatherers, multi-strategy asset managers doing that. So in this case, the investment committee was composed of the shareholders of the management company and not the investment team. The sponsor was taking a significant cut of the management fees of the carried interest, so 30% of the management fees, 40% of the carried interest. In exchange, well, besides the name and hopefully helping on the fundraising, they were providing compliance, legal, and financial reporting services. And we didn't see proposed team commitment. Here, a lot of red flags, and maybe even before that, I think the overarching comment is we prefer independent teams. We will look at captive structures or structures with a significant sponsor if we feel that that's the only way to address a specific strategy, a specific vertical market gap. So if we see two teams doing roughly equivalent and doing the same, one is independent, one is captive or partially captive, we'll almost always go with the independent. That being said, we can do captive teams. And in this case, that raises quite a few red flags. So the first one, fund and management company governance, and the control of the fund by the dedicated team for the investments. Then, is the team really operating independently from the sponsor and adequately resourced? Third, alignment of interest, in particular with the dedicated team. Then the sharing of economics. And then the need for reinforced LP protection clauses. So how did we address the various issues here? So the first thing, that's not always the case, but when we do captive team, we also like to pave a way towards independence. So well, it's not always possible, but very often we see, so if that's the first time team that went there because they couldn't do it on their own, we will try to see, is there a way to make them independent? And frankly, I mean, that's something that might sound unrealistic, but I can tell you that 2 weeks ago I was on due diligence with the first time leaders actually doing gender smart investments, and they had to work with an asset manager. We had the first chunk of the discussion, we like you, we have a lot of respect for the asset manager that you're working with, but we want you to be independent. And not necessarily for the next fund, but for this fund if we can. We are managing it, but that's something different. So how do we manage that? Usually it's, well, we agree that there should be a price to the services provided by the sponsor. So it can be part of the management fee, and it can be part of the carried interest, but it has to be commensurate with what is brought by them, and the team has to be properly incentivized. And if possible, so that's when we try to have them spin out after, we set clear milestones for the team to become independent. And we usually, I mean, sometimes we really protect that through share buyback plans. So it can be like irrevocable call option for the team, so that we make sure that you tell us it will become independent. Well, it has to happen, and that's how it's going to happen. Governance, in that case, I think was a huge issue. So for us, it's paramount that the investment team is in control of the investment decisions. So the investment committee, being usually the most important, has to be controlled by the team. We can have people from the sponsor, they have to be a minority, and ideally there should be, they should never have any veto, and the team should be able to force decisions. And then conversely, on the budget and resources side, we want to make sure that the team has control over its budget and its HR decisions. I mean, they have to have a ring-fence budget that is based on the management companies generated by the fund. Otherwise, we're just paying the sponsor. And team setup, it's a bit more of the same here, but we want a fully functional ring-fence team. And the involvement of the broader sponsor is nice, and very often we see that there's a benefit for the support function and sometimes value creation, but that shouldn't be the core of the proposal. We invest in the people dedicated to the team, not a big asset manager. Alignment of interest with the dedicated team. Here, again, a huge drawback. If you are captive or partly captive, we look at how the actual team is incentivized and aligned with the investors. So that goes through the remuneration scheme. So we want the team to be sort of incentivized and remunerated as in an independent fund. We do not look for employees. So it's great that you have a high salary and high bonus. Actually, we prefer lower salaries and a strong share of the carried interest. The team commitment should be aligned with market standards. In particular, if you're working with a large sponsor, we will not compromise. We compromise is the level that is committed by the team, but we need to have it, and it needs to be significant. And then, so economics, we already went through that, but we look, very often in these cases, then we look at the budget, and if we have a separate management company, separate entity for the fund, we will actually look at how the budget surplus happens and if there are any dividends, and we will very often limit the dividend distributions to make sure that any surplus is just reinvested in the team. And LP protection clauses, again, we'll have our legal colleagues present you that, but if we're in a captive team, we are very careful. there's a huge risk. It happens that the sponsors don't like the team or there's an issue and they fire part of the people. So we want to have reinforced key executive clauses to make sure that we protect the team for us, but also for them. And then we have reinforced change of control provision and removal provision. If we feel that it's not going in the right direction, we want to be able to act, at least as a threat, because then that gives us leverage in the discussions with the sponsor in case things happen. I stop there because you have also we started late, but...
May I suggest perhaps we take the last example from the private credit? Then I know that some of you have booked the Ask Me Anything sessions, so these sessions will be maintained. They will be just a little bit delayed, so bear with us. And we are just running through the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just wondering, improvising a bit on the spot, what has already been said and what is really specific here. So I think in terms of team, what we can really underline also from the private credit side, we look for independence. Then what do we see? That sometimes you have existing structures, like, for example, a bank and existing asset managers that do start setting up private credit strategies or that set up like more sustainable thematic strategies. So let's say the focus is on provide alternative finance to SMEs and small mid-caps, and we kind of try to make it work to still have the, let's say, the most important point is really to have the team in control of the investment decisions. Because the due diligence, we make it on the team. We don't make it on some sort of sponsor or on a bank manager that just sits on the investment committee. So really the competence that is looked at is at the level of the team, and that needs to be reflected in the fund structure. It needs to be reflected in the incentive mechanism. I think I'm not going through the case study as such. I'll just look at the let's say the solutions that we can find. And so what do we see, for example, on the investment committee, meaning the persons that in the end take the investment decisions that are responsible. So as said before, it needs to be investment team members. Can we have like some external experts to be consulted? Yes, But then in the end, it needs to be really stay with the investment team, and these people should also be covered by the key person clauses to have this, this responsibility. And then again, in terms of alignment of interest, we mentioned before the 80-20 structure for private credit. We're more in the 10-90 structure. And then what we like to see often is when we have a more, let's say, a thematic or also impact fund, then there should be a link of this performance fee also to the non-financial objective. I think that hasn't been mentioned before, is an important point. Then on the fund structure and LP protection clauses, I think no need to add anything. What has been said before by the colleagues is also applicable. What could we say here? I think, the first one is a very typical, is a very private credit specific one, just to be sure that the technology that is used is proven, which is a bit like less applicable on the VC and on the private equity side, but on the credit assessment side, you can base it a bit more on technology, and that needs to be something there which has been used, which has a track record, and there still needs to be the human element of actually assessing each underlying transaction. Then in terms of strategy, it needs to be a defined strategy, not a mix of several credit strategies that are combined into one fund. And I think on the ownership and the fund structure, it has been mentioned before. Maybe what can be interesting to say is that it's at the level of the fund, but also at the level of the ownership. So we have seen cases like, for example, we really like a proposal, and as we move on, we see, oh, actually, that entity is owned by a really complex structure that has entities offshore, and I mean, it doesn't happen very often, but we have seen cases where in the end we couldn't invest. So this is also one of the reasons why we ask for a detailed ownership structure very early on in the process. And I think on the sustainability angle that has been mentioned, that it's really an important point that it needs to be integrated in the investment process, and we're also happy to provide guidance on this point. What we also like to see here is to really have a small share, at least when it's a generalist fund, dedicated to sustainable investments. What is the good side on private credit? It can be done through the purpose of finance or through the actual company activity. So that's really something that we encourage as well. And so I think it would be just important to really make these last final comments, that what you've seen right now is really an overview of different points we do look at. Every case is specific. The EIF is here, our team, and all the other colleagues that are not here on stage now are happy to interact. It is an iterative process, and we're happy to provide feedback. And when you apply, I mean, we have different ways to react. We can, of course, pre-select, which is, of course, the preferred outcome. But then we can also reserve list, which can mean wait a little bit, work on a few points, and then come back. And always we maintain the communication channel at the same time. And yes, then there are also possibilities to reject for the various reasons that have been mentioned. So I think that would be it from our side. And if we still have time for questions.
Thank you very much. I believe that it was indeed a very intense morning. And thanks also, my personal thanks to the colleagues now on stage and also colleagues in the audience, because they were instrumental to bring forward the gender agenda.